Abby is a life-size sculpture which portrays a young athlete in an exciting and dynamic pose. Creating a piece like this requires many hours of work. It also requires a whole range of skills, both artistic and practical. Len Gifford works from a studio in Milton Keynes Village, where he created the Abby sculpture. The process began with meeting the model.
I've worked with Abby before, and she's got a superb body, and she's a fitness coach. So her fine-toned body is just right for the athletic pose I had in mind.
Each model has her own way of posing, and it's important to agree not just the pose, but the message the sculptor is trying to convey.
Abby has a strong body, extremely feminine and not too muscular. Her fitness allows her to hold a demanding pose longer than most.
Working through a few poses, Len can quickly establish one that conveys the idea of movement and athleticism that he wants.
Okay, now do the same thing on the floor.
He takes photos from all angles to use as a reference when Abby is not there. Having precise measurements will also help him to check that he's got the size and shape of the clay right.
On this sculpture, I decided to do the head first to help me scale the rest of the body. I actually made several versions of Abby as Abby tried new hairstyles.
An armature is used to support the clay. Getting the armature right is vital. Len uses square aluminium rod. It's easily bent and capable of supporting around 300 pounds of clay. Abby is there to make sure the armature is in the right place. The plaster head gives a better idea of scale. Wood is taped and wired to the armature to prevent the clay slipping on the rod and to reduce the weight of the clay. With a crouching pose like this, Len works on the torso and legs first so that he can get into difficult areas.
When I start adding clay, the important thing is to build up and shape it to resemble a model. I'm not too worried about the surface at this stage.
Each shape and muscle is refined. It's quite a strain on Abby to hold this pose. The human body is designed for motion, not for holding one position for long periods. That's why Len prefers to work with trained dancers and gymnasts. To help, he's given Abby a wooden block to sit on and a grab handle so that she can maintain the same position for the 6 days she's posing. As the sculpture progresses, each shape and volume is checked against the real Abby. In the process, the clay starts to become smooth and the shapes refined again and again. With clay on the body and legs, Len can now start on the arms.
Using wood to bash the clay seems to help me make the shapes of the muscles. As I look at Abby, I subconsciously get the shapes I want.
Adding the hands completes the clay modelling. The clay has to be kept wet to prevent it drying out and cracking. The easiest way of casting a figure this complicated is to make a waist mould. First, lines are drawn to show where the edges of each section will be. Putting all this pressure on the clay is risky, so some helping hands are very welcome. To make moulding and casting simpler, the arms have to be cut off and moulded separately. I hope Abby's not watching, it could be painful. Now it's easier to make good and refine the rest of the clay. Clay walls are used where the joins in the mould will be. These will be removed after one side is completed. Now the plaster. Splashing plaster of Paris on the clay is a messy business, but it's the easiest way of applying the first layer without damaging the clay. The leg mould is fragile, so it needs reinforcing with steel rods. With the clay wall removed, the other side can be cast to complete this stage. The joins are just visible. Boiling water softens the clay and makes the mould easier to remove. The mould must be taken apart carefully as it's only made of thin plaster. The clay is removed and cleaned, ready for the next project. The pieces of the mould are both heavy and fragile.
Beautiful.
At this stage, the mould looks more like a jigsaw puzzle. Polyester gel coat with a black pigment is mixed with a catalyst, which will set to a hard plastic. The mould has been sealed with shellac and waxed to stop the gel coat sticking. Once the gel coat has hardened, A thinner polyester resin is applied and reinforced with glass fibre mat. Before the cast hardens, the seams are trimmed.
I mark the two halves of the mould to help me align them later.
The process from soft clay to hard resin is called waste moulding, and this is where the plaster cast is wasted or destroyed. Once the mould is removed, the flashing where the two halves have been joined has to be taken off. After a few finishing touches, the model is ready for assembly.
Assembling Abbey, I'm using modern technology, steel mannequin joints on the waist and spigot, and an older technology, Roman joint, seen some 3,000 years ago in the arms and shoulders.
The last session with Abby is to compare the sculpture with her. Not bad considering the difficulty of Abby holding the pose and in front of a television crew. The final sculpture is a work of art, worthy of taking pride of place in any gallery, home or garden.